on coaches. This sounds an odd subject, and the title is actually taken from one of Montaigne's essays. Montaigne's essays are one of the things on which I've based these short musings, and I like the title, and it's a very good essay, as usual, going off onto all sorts of fascinating things. Now, I thought of doing something on transport, on cars and bus journeys and coaches of that kind, but there's not much to say in my life about that that's interesting. So there's another meaning to coach, which means to teach, to make a student practice things. So you can have a cricket coach or a football coach. And more generally, much of teaching is about coaching people. The main point about coaches and why they're perhaps a little different from normal teachers, as I begin to think about it, is that they're particularly applied to things like cricket and games and sports and swimming and maybe music. They're applied to crafts and games and music and arts. And that's because the nature of a coach is somewhat different from certainly a teacher in the first years of your life. A teacher in the first years of your life is passing on information, facts, dates, mathematical techniques, and so it's a direct transmission of information and knowledge to the student. And there's not much inspiration being passed on, and the method is to say, do this, remember this, learn this. The nature of coaching is rather different. It's when the art or the skill is something which the person themselves have to develop, and the role of the coach is to stand and watch and see how it's being done and improve it, coach them up to a higher standard in tennis or whatever. You can say a few things like hold the bat like this, but after that it's almost all about watching how they actually use the bat, and when they use it in a satisfactory manner, you either say that's fine, well done, or when they make mistakes. And that's the main role of a coach, is to say, well, you missed the ball then because, or the pot was crooked because, and then you correct where they have gone wrong and gradually improve their skills up and up by adjusting whatever it is that they are doing. It's a long process. It requires a teacher who is respected and who obviously does have the skill. And I found in my own life that I was moved from a world in which I was mainly taught at schools to university level, where you are really coached. Sometimes people talk about it as mentoring, and mentoring has an even stronger sort of moral element as well as an element of teaching. But whatever you call it, a university teacher, certainly after the first year or so, is coaching their students. They get their essays or whatever their assignments are, and they look at it and they point out mainly the shortcomings and show how it could be improved. And while that is true of undergraduate life, I found supervising PhD students was even more about coaching. They were often on subjects about which I knew hardly anything before the PhD student started. So I couldn't say, these are the facts that you need to know about Guyana or Japan or wherever it was the student was working. But when they started to write, I'd say, well, I suggest that you leave that bit till later, because you can't really talk about it until you've done more work on other things. I suggest that you put in some more references to secondary literature here or whatever it is. So from your experience of having supervised others, from your experience of having done a PhD yourself, in my case, you can help them do what they naturally have to do themselves. You are much more like a guide on an expedition who is saying, let's go this way, and if people go in the wrong way, you say, no, I don't think that's a good way to go. Or a ship's pilot on the front of the boat saying, watch out for these rocks, head off that direction. So you guide and suggest and leave it to their own skills and energy. And if you do that with encouragement, when they do well, they will respond nearly always positively. So both being coached and later in my life coaching is a great pleasure, because it's almost like gardening. In a way, you're doing what a gardener does. You don't grow as a tree. You watch a tree, and if it's growing well, you water it and so on. If it's growing in the wrong direction, you prune it. And so you are a coach in a garden, and you can be a coach to other people and an inspiration, hopefully. So find a good coach if you want to learn something.